Ogopa was up. Nambona to Ogope was up. WhatsApp here being basically the umbrella we're using for the internet. We don't often think about how we navigate the internet, what laws exist as far as defamation, libel, what is admissible in court, crimes that are committed online. There's also, like this year I learned about technology-facilitated gender-based violence, something I'd not heard before. I'm like, okay, what's this? What does that mean? We'll do all of that deep dive with Mutemi. Before that, though, let's give her our quote of the day.
Yes, let's do that. Today's quote of the day is from one of our YouTube fixers, actually, called Lenny. And I can see he came back in to say, thank you for reading the quote. But he said, Kenya would be a superpower if all factors were constant.
Oh.
Right?
Oh, come on. Like,
yes.
Yeah, that's deep. Yeah. Agreed.
Yeah.
100% agreed. If everything worked the way it was supposed to work,
right,
we would be the ones. Yeah. Yeah.
Can you imagine? Yeah. Like, maybe that's a fantasy that I would like. You know how Wakanda is painted? I try to think of what an optimal Kenya would look like, and it's the stuff of novels and like superhero movies, right? It's not unachievable to me. I don't think it's okay to say that it's unachievable, because if you think that, then it is the truth. It's like, okay, no. But when it comes to the internet, we have great internet penetration. We're doing amazing. We are internet savvy. We are quick early adopters. We are TikTokers through and through, but we don't often think of the other side. You know, rights, responsibilities, you know, they come hand in hand. But talk to me, first of all, about the digital landscape, its evolution, and how much of a player we are in it, in the world of tech right now.
All right. First of all, thanks for having me. For those who just joined us, my name is Mutemi. I am a tech labor and digital rights advocate. I spend my time thinking about how, as a country, as a continent, we can achieve fair and equitable access to the internet, and how we can have our rights respected online. So I like that question because it's really contextualizing us as a country, as a people, like in this whole internet madness. Where do we fit? And my first point of call is we are not that well connected. So it's very easy to get lost in our little cocoon here in Nairobi. It's a very elite cocoon where we are early adapters. We're on all social media platforms, but I usually like to challenge people to go back home and ask their grandparents, how do you receive the news?
On the radio?
Yes.
On the TV?
Yes, yes. So outside of Nairobi, the internet penetration becomes WhatsApp access, Facebook access. Our parents are now on Facebook. But still, we are not all meaningfully on the internet. We haven't reached what we like to call universal access levels. The internet penetration levels are still not fair or equitable. So we have an imbalance there, where people who have access to the internet do so well because the internet is a magnifying glass. If you're already in a good school and you add internet, then education becomes amazing. If you're in a really bad school, and now with the CBC that requires people to do a lot of research, a lot of it is online based, and you don't have access to the internet, it magnifies your poverty, it magnifies your lack. So as a country, first of all, it's important now that we're even going to the next era of AI, artificial intelligence. It's important to know that as a country, we never quite paid enough attention to universal access and make sure that everybody was online. And that has implications even in the next era. Beyond saying that, I'll say the way we consume internet has really changed. Studies done in the last 2 to 3 years have shown that our use of internet predominantly is social media use. So even how I interact, for example, with nation media content is I'll get it on social media and then follow like a link. I'm not predominantly Googling it or buying a newspaper. I'm following it on social media, and then it leads to me to more. So social media has become the key place, or the main media through which we exercise our right to freedom of expression, which I know is what has caused like a whole problem, because okay, what can I say, what can I not say? And then again there you see the whole magnifying glass effect, right? When it was just me and you and Janet, I could tell Janet one thing, it would be the most defamatory thing If she didn't say it to anybody else, I mean, like, that's the end of the world. It's the end of the conversation, right? But right now, I could do the same thing on WhatsApp with Janet, and that thing will become public fodder in like 5 seconds. And that is what the internet does. It just magnifies things. So it's how do we then adjust ourselves appropriately? The rules haven't changed. The laws haven't changed. The constitutional right to freedom of expression with its limits has not changed. The issue now is we interact in a very different medium, and how are we supposed to do that? That's where now the conversation goes. Yeah.
I think about how unafraid people are when it's online. I think that's why we've seen doxing and all of these really, Mariam likes to call them red flags, green flags, right? Internet red flags, and maybe we can start there. What are some of them? I think some of these words sound so big till it happens to you. Then you're told, oh, what happened to you is doxing. And you're like, look, I'm still just traumatizing and trying to find myself. What is this doxing thing? But straight up, what are some of the 1, 2, 3 things that people need to be aware of when they're interacting with the internet?
I like the way you asked that question about like what are the red flags on the internet. I'm like, how much time do you have?
How many hours?
How many hours? And balance it with green flags. Oh, although you have spoken to that, the magnifying, the amplification.
So let me. I think a better way to go about it is these are the things you can say, and then everything else falls off, right?
Okay. That's good.
I like that.
Yeah. So I'm a huge campaigner and advocate for Article 33 of our Constitution because I think that is where it starts and falls. Even a lot of conversations on social media are either, you know, political or emotional conversations, but then when you really cut deep to, okay, but what really is the rule, it comes down to Article 33 of the Constitution. And basically what it says is you have the freedom to express yourself across any media, say anything that you want, including creativity and creatively expressing yourself. Just do anything you want, except you cannot do these things. And then the beauty of our Constitution, unlike many constitutions other places in the world, is that it actually took the time to explain the excluded categories of speech. So for example, it's hate speech. And hate speech in the way it's defined in the law, not, you know, hating on somebody, because I know that's what people use a lot of.
I've got haters.
Yes.
Take you to court. I've got.
You're trolled a lot on social media, and unfortunately, as sad as it is, especially I know that female journalists have gone through a lot of abuse online. Unfortunately, a very small category of that abuse rises to the level of hate speech. All of it is just trolling and not liking people's weaves and you know, things like that. So there's hate speech, there's propaganda for war, there's incitement to violence based on discrimination. So it's targeting a specific category of people and inciting violence against them. So those are the very restricted categories where, you know, you cannot be allowed to say these things. That is when the courts would step in. And then there's another provision in Article 33 that says, as you exercise your right to freedom of expression, you should respect other people's rights. So then that gives you a guide. It's like a cheat code. What I'm doing, my expressing, right? I am free to express anything in whatever forum. It can be satire, it can be whatever form of art. But the moment I step on somebody else's rights, then that is the line I've crossed. So then, for example, doxing, right? I'm free to share anything that I want, but the moment I share your private number, then I've affected your right to privacy. So then that becomes, oh, okay, I expressed my right will be upheld up to and until the point where I broke her privacy, then she has a claim against me and the courts can step in. Think about incitement to violence, right? You can say anything, you can say how unhappy you are about a situation, about a person, and then when you cross the line and you call for someone to be harmed, then you've crossed the line. So that's how it's an objective way of thinking about communication without coming up with a to-do list, because a lot of the conversations we get gaslit about, this is illegal and this is wrong, is actually legitimate speech. People expressing what they're unhappy about, people putting it even into art, whether the art comes in the form of actual drawings or deep fakes, that is art, right? And then the question becomes, how did I cross the line if I didn't touch on your rights? So for me, that is a more objective way to look about it. Yeah,
I like it. You know, every time we talk to someone, especially people who are lawyers, we were asking what's a constitutional lawyer. But yes, the law is always clear. Or even in places where we've been open to interpretation, those are very few and far in between. But it seems that the selectiveness of when it's applied is what's the problem.
Exactly.
So, for example, it seems that, whether it's a Cyber Crimes Act or if it's people being accused of defamation, that always seems to be coming from people who are more powerful. And then on the other end, it's like, okay, no, you were what? You were doxxed? Oops, someone leaked your phone number? Oh, our bad. That selective application is now the problem.
Yes.
Is there a consistent issue with that, with applying the law equally? And then how do we reverse it?
Okay. Let's start with the Cybercrime Act piece, the Computer Misuse and Cybercrime Act piece.
Yes.
I challenged that law in court, and I had the privilege of looking at the Hansard of Parliament before they passed that law. And it was at the cusp of countries coming up with cybercrime legislation because there are these offenses that are not provided in traditional penal codes. For example, like when you break into someone's computer, I mean, that's a legitimate offense, it should be legislated upon. But what had happened at that time, it was just around the previous elections, is a lot of members of parliament who were vying for the next house had been exposed, right? Whether it's corruption scandals, whether it's this. So then the discussion on the Hansard shows that the cybercrime discussion that had come in as a good draft to regulate crime online took a tangent where it turned to MPs saying, oh, they said I slept with somebody else's wife. Oh, they said that I did this, and that was fake news. So then now it became a legislation about gagging people and stopping legitimate conversations. Think about the NYS saga. When the blogger came in and said, okay, this has happened, they were arrested. And it was like, no, this is fake news. This is fake news. 3 months later, the government, we lost so much money through NYS. That is exactly what the goal of that law was. So two problems that we have with the cybercrime laws and the defamation laws. So we do have a very old Defamation Act that has not been revised over the years, and it's still what we use together with what we call common law rules, just rules developed by judges. Now we see people, journalists, bloggers, and just users on social media facing an increase in what we call SLAPP suits, which is strategic litigation against public participation. You will find a journalist who's...
Just rewind select so we get it.
Okay.
Strategic litigation against
public participation. But it's just a SLAPP suit. Like you speak, you're slapped. Think about it that way. Yeah, so it's strategic litigation against public participation, and the biggest users of this tool are politicians and businesses. So it's a way, like as a journalist, you know how hard it is to get something published. Like your editor has to approve it, your lawyer has to approve it, it has to go through pre-publication review, right?
And even then.
So there are these lawsuits where the moment you say something, someone rushes to court to get a gag order and to get it taken down, and then ties you in litigation, and litigation in this country does take quite a bit of time. So the public has been gagged because that is a strategic litigation meant to stop public participation on an issue. So we are seeing abuse of the defamation laws to curtail legitimate conversations, because these conversations on governance, on corruption, on human rights, or even abuses by companies, that is legitimate conversation. So when you curtail that, you've really taken people's freedom of speech away. And then we see again, from the time that the Computer Misuse and Cybercrimes Act was passed, how many bloggers do you know that have been arrested for the offense of fake news? Right? And I always ask this, okay, fine, if you're saying that there should be, an offense for fake news, who's the arbiter of truth? Who's telling us what the truth is? So like between the two of you, who is in the middle saying this is the truth? Is it the judge? Is the judge going to do a fact finding and find that? And it's good that the Bloggers Association of Kenya actually took that law to court earlier on, and I represent them in that case. And one of the things I remember they asked me is, how many people are actually going to get jailed for this? Not arrested. Actually go through the process and get jailed. This is the drama that is now happening in courts. The prosecutor keeps asking for adjournments because he doesn't even know how to prosecute.
He's not equipped.
Exactly. He's not the arbiter of truth. So if you accuse me of fake news, that means like there was a real news somewhere. So who's the person who's coming to say the real news?
This is the truth. This is what's
exactly. So we've ended up in this cycle where people just get harassed through arrests, and the arrests are happening on Friday.
Yes.
Wow.
So that you sleep inside?
It's supposed to, it's the thing I say, it's supposed to wear you down. It's supposed to, what you said, gag. Every week, at least every week, there's a different politician or public figure calling for the regulation of social media. If it wasn't the Kotu chair last week, the week before it was a certain PS or CS, regulation of social media. Is this what you're speaking to? It's very vague.
Yeah.
What... is there any way that they have a right to say that? Like, where do they get to cross the line, and where are they within their rights?
So this is the thing that I find the most shocking. What is so different about how we express ourselves now and how we used to express ourselves is just the medium, but the expression remains the same. I like to give this example of I'm sure I'm just going to butcher the name. Just outside, I think, the county offices, there used to be like a kamukunji that people would just stand there and people would be sharing the most ridiculous.
Bunge la Wananchi?
I don't know whether it was Bunge. No, I don't think it was Bunge la Wananchi. It was just some weird, like, and it used to happen a lot.
Yeah.
And in every village, you'd find the equivalent where someone, the most knowledgeable person would stand and address a crowd and say the most ridiculous thing, and it would just you would listen and be like, oh my God, this person is saying these things, and nothing would happen to that. And then again, it's a magnifying effect. What they're feeling right now is the effect. If I said something, whether it's critiquing governance to a crowd of 10 people, it would be negligible, right? But if I say that to an audience of 1 million, and that's what the internet gives us the power to do, is to amplify our messaging, right? If I say that to 1 million people, then perhaps I even change 900,000 people's minds. And that's what's dangerous, right? So when you say regulating social media, two things I have an issue with is, why are we acting that like expression is not regulated? It is already regulated. There is the Constitution, first of all, that is just the beginning and the end of it. And even the laws that keep coming from Parliament that I'm saying are not compliant with the Constitution. Those are efforts to regulate the internet that keep falling short of what the Constitution says. For example, criminal defamation used to be a big thing in our laws, and it's come back through the cybercrimes laws, right, where you'd get arrested for defaming a politician. Constantly, the courts held this was unconstitutional. Our constitution does not allow for you to have criminal defamation. If someone has been defamed, let them go to civil court, let them go through the process and prove that they were actually defamed, right? So I don't buy into that hype of let's regulate social media, because already there exists ways to enforce the standards. The thing that I hear when I hear for that call for regulate social media is, can you stop it from being as powerful as it is? When you've heard about the conversations on regulating social media, this is the tangent it takes. Bring those social media companies here.
Right.
Okay. Let's go to India for a second, right? That is the model that India took. Bring the social media companies here. And Twitter, when it was still Twitter, complied. And there was a time where the government in India gave Twitter shutdown notices for several accounts, like take down several accounts. And Twitter, at that time, being an American company, free speech, said, these ones we can take down because they violate our community standards. But these ones feel like legitimate expression. They don't violate your laws and they don't violate our community standards. What happened? There were cops outside Twitter headquarters. They were being physically beaten up and harassed until they took it down. So when I hear regulate social media, I feel like that is the direction that people are pushing us to, where the thing is just so out of control.
Like find a way to control it.
Exactly. You don't have the power to put genie back in the bottle, so you're like, let's break the bottle instead. But I mean, other countries have tried. Even with the internet shutdowns, still people are able to access the internet. That's the beauty of it. It's not a thing that can be regulated because nobody can answer the question, who owns the internet? Where's the kill switch?
We had an idea during the 2024 protest that there could be a kill switch, but we're about to go on a break, and I want to come back and talk about what's the threshold for defamation. It can't be criminal, but even in a civil case, because it's being used, willy-nilly.
board.
Some legitimate cases, but yes, across the board. So we'll come back, and of course, if you have a question around tech labor, which we'll also get into, we're a big market and getting even bigger.
Yes.
So how do we regulate that? Is it fair as it stands right now? Are people getting a fair compensation, fair treatment, fair work environment, and much more? Hashtag is Fixing the Nation NTV. We'll be back with Mercy in just a bit. Like Janet said, we're with Mercy discussing tech, of course, tech labor. She's a digital rights lawyer as well, and we just want to unpack that. But before I get into anything else, you said you wanted to speak on it, and I wanted to speak on it, and Janet wanted to speak on it. Tech labor, we're becoming quite a big market for it. A lot of big Silicon Valley companies coming here. They find well-educated, informed people who are capable of doing the work at a fraction of the cost. And it looks like an important economic activity. It's an opportunity for people to make a living. But then on the other side, there's a lack of regulation and a callousness. What have you seen so far as tech labor is concerned? Are people genuinely being misused or abused or underpaid or all of these things? Or is it just like standout situations?
Okay. I really love that we're thinking about our tech landscape from a very comprehensive perspective, because then it's important to address that piece as well. Perhaps a good starting point would be to really demystify when we say tech labor, what jobs are we talking about, what is actually happening in the country. So tech labor really is work that's done on the platform, and tomorrow is Labor Day. Heads up to Happy pre-Labor Day. And also a lot of I don't know how to say this, but like I have so much respect for all the people who, carry out tech labor, and I wish them a happy Labor Day in advance. And these are the ride-hailing drivers, for example. We have a huge population of young people, especially joining the ride-hailing industry. We have a lot of the algorithm labelers out there. Shout out to people who label algorithms and who annotate algorithms. We have content moderators out there. We have people doing freelance jobs. So shout out to all of them. But what I wanted to say is we have for some time now been pushing for people to join online jobs, digital jobs, and
finya computer
dollar inatoka narrative, right?
Yeah.
But very rarely have we stopped to ask ourselves, what are these jobs? What are these jobs? One, what are they doing to our workforce? And three, how are they benefiting us as a country? And I think it's time that we have this global conversation. It's important you've brought it up. Will you be shocked if I told you, like, Tesla cars are being labeled in Kenya?
I'm sorry?
Oh, I love that look. I really love that look of shock. Yes. So, how do you imagine that self-driving cars know how to drive themselves? They have to be taught.
Yes.
So on my what is it called? The tagline. I have this line that I really like to say, that the algorithm is a person, because when you dig behind that algorithm is a person. And very often it's a Kenyan seated somewhere, either in their house or in one of these business process outsourcing companies, labeling the algorithm. Tesla cars were trained in Kenya for a good part of it. Walmart self-checkout.
Huh?
Yes.
Wait, why don't you know this? Actually, as Mariam, I remember, I hope I don't make you forget your point, but I do remember 60 Minutes doing an expose.
Exactly.
And I was really happy that they did that, because they were trying to understand. And I think what you're saying, I'm now remembering hearing some of them say this is what we do. And I thought, what?
Yes.
And speaking to being underpaid, but we'll come to that.
Yes.
As we still clutch our pearls and everything.
I've
Walmart.
had the pleasure of representing the workers who are in the 60 Minutes documentary. Right. And for the last couple of years, I've just been immersing myself in their world and learning about what they do. So this is what, when you hear digital jobs or just, sign up for a job, a lot of the times it's for algorithm training. And there are so many complexities there and so many violations that are also happening because of what just that mysteriousness around it. And if you didn't know, you're the journalist, you're supposed to know. So imagine our parents, imagine then the government, like who knows about what's actually happening in the country. We have people who are labeling the algorithms for use in hospitals that, can just scan you and tell you actually you have cancer and it's at this stage. That's happening in Kenya, right? So a lot of them are algorithm training jobs, and this is how they're happening. For the most part, it's on platforms. You had last year when the president was encouraging people to sign up on Remo tasks, and the Bonyeza computer unapata dollar narrative. Those were algorithm training jobs, but nobody is actually filtering what's coming. So that then we have people as young as 18, because you're being encouraged, even out of high school, join these jobs, who are just signing up for these platforms. Remote tasks, by the way, ended up shutting down accounts for all Kenyans and went with people's money. So that's when you ask me whether people are being paid about it, there's a very huge conversation around forced labor happening in that field, where the whole model is gamified. We all are familiar with video games and how that works, and I like to give that example where you're told if you get to this stage, then you're going to get some coins. So it's something similar, except you just never quite get to that stage. And everything you do, like if you're training an algorithm to understand who Janet is to really take a picture of Janet and label, this is Janet's eye lead, and this is Janet's eye, and this is it. So then if you tell me that I've not done a good job, but you already know who Janet is, so I've already trained your algorithm. So there's a lot of abuse that's happening there. It's an international problem. It's happening everywhere across the world. And I really want to give a shout out to the Data Labelers Association, because they're now thinking about how to advocate for better working conditions in that space. Tech work can also look like content moderation. So we use social media, TikTok, Facebook. I want to remind you to a time when TikTok was famous for the 3 a.m. lives. And you know what was happening there? Need I say what was happening there? And there was this whole conversation of, because of the morality issue, TikTok should be, banned from Kenya, and there's a parliamentary petition that went into parliament. And I remember being asked by the Law Society of Kenya to represent them at the parliamentary hearing, and having this conversation with MPs who did not know that content moderation for the same TikTok we're talking about is actually happening in Westlands. So then you're saying, let's ban TikTok when you have a solution where you could just hold the company accountable and ask them, how many people do you have to moderate your content? But I want you to put yourself in the shoes of this person. In my scrolling experience, I don't come across very bad videos. I don't come across people being murdered or children being abused. And that's not because there's some magic. That's because there's a human somewhere who has to consume that content. So the algorithm will pick it up, or the first person will see that this is a violent video, especially think about riots here in Nairobi and how violent they get. You get to see like the cleaner versions of it because someone is busy looking at that video. So if your job from 8 to whatever time is just looking at the worst of humanity, and if we have the platform, we can't be gross. It will be that. It will be suicides. It will be so much evil in the world. That is all you consume.
Didn't you speak to that? Was it when we were sidebarring? Or am I dreaming that you were speaking to the trauma that people who are sifting through?
Yes,
right.
Absolutely.
100%.
And if there's any psychosocial support for them, if there's any way to get redress for them for being sometimes for going through things that they were not meant to, if there even is a way to have them not go through that, because I think 8 to 5 sitting looking at the worst of humanity so that you can pluck it out, so that now when
we can enjoy,
when Mariam and Janet and Mercy are scrolling, we're like, Gucci, love my algorithm. I don't know.
Let me even complicate this a little bit more for you. It's not so that you and I have a good experience. No. Social media platforms make money out of advertising, right? So think about Facebook, Instagram. When you're scrolling, how many adverts do you see? Exactly. And they're like adjacent. Some of them don't even know it's an advert. It's just like, oh my God, it's a constant. This is how I like to explain it. It's a timeline of adverts, then some posts at this point.
That's true.
Right?
100%.
So they're cleaning up the platform so that advertisers can continue advertising. It's in their business interest to clean up the platform. But then, this is where it gets complicated. So I'll speak to the case in court filed by former Facebook content moderators against Meta. And one of the things that we've discovered along the way while litigating that case is that how content moderators are treated this part of the world is so different for how content moderation generally is treated elsewhere, in that we are part of the rest of the world where we don't form a very critical mass enough for them to invest in, enough content moderators. So you have one person doing like hundreds of thousands of, content review. And what does that do to this person? You have then no proper investments in, mental health care, for example. And this cuts across the board, because even the person who's labeling the algorithm from their home, seated on a bed because they don't have like a proper working station. I was going to say, like, what has now become clear is that now some of the jobs that are being sent through these platforms are pornography labeling jobs. And it doesn't matter how young you were. So you imagine in your little sister, like, seated somewhere in their dorm in campus, and that's what they're doing. They're labeling so that like some person somewhere can search for that, pornography piece and get the right combination. Like, these are the jobs, right? But what mental health care is that person getting? Are we looking at a situation where we'll have very early entrance into the labor market, for example, where very young people will join 15, 16, 17, and then for like 5 years they can't do any job because of mental health harm, right? Is that the situation we're looking at? And it is important to note and to contextualize this in terms of the economic development conversation. We're saying that this is how we want to move forward. This is how we make it to the next frontier. But are we really taking the time to study the model within which this is being done? I agree that AI is the next level. We just launched like our national AI policy, for example. And one of the conversations around that launch was that how we have a very limited AI capacity as a country. But you're also training Tesla's cars.
Yeah.
Oh my God. So you don't have low capacity. So where's the gap?
This is where the gap is. Intellectual property concerns, right? Like if I'm the company that's giving you the labeling job, I don't want you to steal my intellectual property. That's why I'm breaking it down into like so many pieces. So you never quite know what you're doing. Like people who do AI training jobs, a lot of them don't know that they're doing AI training jobs, and it's hidden. You don't know you're labeling the algorithm underlying the metaverse, for example, or even Instagram's algorithm. You don't know that. You're just doing this piecemeal job so you can be paid very little money.
Right, for something massive. How do you represent the rights of that person?
Right.
So this is now part of the before we come to the representation, I was telling you how the scalability problem. So if it's broken down in that piece, think about, the job sequence. The only way I can get promoted is get faster at labeling this algorithm. I can never really know how to do it, right? And this is where I say we are a people, the conversation you started with is like, if we function at full capacity, if the people negotiating for these jobs coming to Kenya actually took the time to study and understand what these jobs were, it would really improve even the negotiating, capacity, where you say, we're happy to do your jobs, but number one, care for our people, so that then we're not seeing entrance into the labor market who then get damaged and cannot participate in the economic, number one. Number two, it's, can you give us, for every 10 jobs that you do piecemeal, give us one full job so that then our engineers can get the AI capacity? Because we're in this scenario where we are cocooning ourselves as the labelers of US-based technology forever.
And the moderators, as opposed to active players in a very fast, a fast evolving tech landscape.
Yes.
And I think you're absolutely right. And now we don't have the excuse, because when the internet came out, fine, preserve of the West for a long time, came slowly, but at this point, it's like AI has come to all of us at the same time. Before we get into the economic implications, Janet, I know you wanted to talk about how to represent.
Yes, that part.
Yeah, so people who are
So this is where it's become a little bit complicated, right? When you listen to the government policy on the issue of tech labor, it's just pump the jobs in. Just pump the jobs in. Be blind about it. I question that policy from a human rights perspective, because those are people. Those are people, and if you, call in the economists, call in the political scientists now to the table, and then analyze what is the net benefit to this country if this work is not being done in a sustainable manner, in a way that protects our people. Because we also have laws. For example, our laws say that if I do a job, I should be paid for it. But we're telling you, your young people are caught in a gamified mode where they never quite get the dollars that they're promised. Right? And we're telling you that they're doing jobs that lead to mental health harm, and the law also protects them and gives them the right to fair, working conditions. But then instead, we're seeing pressure from the government. There was a clip last year in December where the president was telling Summer Source that, you were sued last year, and because of that, we've changed the law so that nobody will ever sue you ever again. And I want you to just listen to that speech from the perspective of the worker who says, but my rights have been violated. So enforcement becomes a very difficult thing because the government's heart doesn't seem to be in the place of protecting the workers. It seems to be siding with the tech companies. And it's so serious that now before Parliament, before the Senate, there's a business law amendment that is currently being discussed about how you cannot sue a tech company. And I want you to think about what does that does to our country. Why are we betraying our people to this level where we are saying we are up for grabs? Think about the ride-hailing workers, for example. Ride-hailing, like we all maybe probably took Ubers to come to this place or little cab or whatever means of transport. But they're also telling you the algorithm is harming us. We are caught in a poverty cycle where I never know how much money I'm going to get. I never know how I'm being graded. I don't even know how I get jobs or don't get jobs. And I'm not listened to as a driver. So we're not really paying attention to what technology.
You're not an employee.
Exactly.
You're a contractor.
Exactly.
So you don't have the same rights as an employee.
Exactly. So before we get to the level of we want to grow an AI industry, can we start by paying attention to what's happening? Because if we don't clean up what's happening, what I predict, first of all, is this is going to become an economic negative for us as a country. Where, yes, we were early entrants, but we cannot participate in it anymore. But there's a way to achieve both, where you're attracting people, but then telling them, but you have to comply with our laws. I don't think that's too much to ask for, to say that if you want to operate in this business, I mean, other companies operate in this country and they also have to comply with the laws. So it should be the same, that if you must operate in this country, you're welcome and we want you to bring these jobs, but these are the laws of this country that you need to comply with. We need to see labor officers actually doing the jobs. When workers complain that these things are happening, go to those centers and find out what is actually happening in these BPO centers that people are complaining about. What care is there towards these people who actually we're the underbelly of the tech world as it is. So at this point, it just becomes an issue of, if you have a problem, you have to go to court. And I want to say that's a very problematic place to be as a country, because litigation is very elitist in its own. Not everybody can afford to go to court.
Yani, you've said things where I'm just like, question there. There's so many points.
So much to pull from.
Yeah. I don't even... what was that about? What did you say about we're the underbelly of the tech world?
Yes, we're the underbelly of the tech world. And this is, so it's at a continental level and it's at a country level. Okay. So even the AU now is very pro, we want these jobs, we want these jobs. So what is happening on the African continent is a race to the bottom. And this is what the government will push back with and say, well, if we are too strict on them, they'll move to another country. And they'll give you the example of, you see Meta, you guys sued them and they went to Ghana. I'm like, I don't know that your position as a country should be that we will compromise our laws to accommodate you. These companies benefit immensely from our continent. And what we should be looking at, even from an African Union perspective, is how do we protect our people, and how, most importantly, how do we make sure the continent is participating at a fair level when it comes to the next frontier? Especially
that. I know we'll get into the Ogopa was up at some point and you'll come in. Sometimes I see somebody like you who has this fire to pursue justice, and I wonder where that seed was planted. What's your inroad into this space briefly? I know it's probably a big story, but if you can just highlight that for us.
For me, it started as a geeky interest. I just wanted to understand really, like, what is the social media world? And I went to school and studied about the law and the economics of social media, and I realized, oh my God, a storm is coming, and I don't know that we are prepared, and I don't know that we're even aware that a storm is coming. So earlier, from 2018, this has really been my passion on, yes, we are so happy that me and you can connect to the internet, we can go to eCitizen. But what does that really mean for the people who are not connected, for example? We are so happy that we can express ourselves online. What does that mean for the person who, this is their only voice that they have, but they get arrested when they speak up because the person they speak up against is more powerful? We are happy to use these gadgets, but do we know, for example, that there's a conflict happening in Congo just underlying these gadgets and the raw materials there? Do we know that there are young African men and women here in Kenya who are brought in to do content moderation work and who now complain of PTSD and depression, and this is what we are consuming and we're happy to consume. So I've been very passionate about, and how I like to describe it is, how do we achieve a fair and equitable internet on our continent? Let's make the rules for ourselves. The EU has done it. Right. They have their own version of, literally, they are bullying the companies at this point to the point of change your charger. Right. If you want to sell your product, change your charger, right? They're bullying these companies in a good way. But here we are, and we've sort of stepped in this space where just give us all the trash, the algorithms that don't work, the algorithms that are harmful, do that to us. But then we complain about the same things. Study the 2007-2008 post-election violence report and see the role of social media platforms then, right? And how the failure to do content moderation led to a whole big thing. Not just here. Think about Ethiopia and the conflict that happened there, and social media being a catalyst for that conflict. Right. But the same government is not aware that these same people were working on the continent, were working in your country, and all you need to do is just say, we want to know what those jobs are. So then we protect ourselves. It is the one field where not paying attention to the labor perspective leads to harm down the line. Right. If you don't pay attention to the person who's sitting in Westlands and moderating TikTok, you end up with a TikTok that is oversaturated with 3 a.m. lives that are harmful. Right. So you actually have to care for the person, because that affects all of us. So it's a passion of mine, and this is mainly what keeps me at night. Is just how do we make this fair? How do we make this work for everybody? And how do we put the people back in the center of the not governments, not companies, not profits? How do we put people back in the center?
Thank you for connecting the dots, because a lot of the times we don't see them. You think these things happen in isolation, and when you don't piece them together, then you're not able to push back. I want to pull at that. You mentioned like EU laws, super strong. Our Data Privacy Act is often said to mimic the GDPR. Are we doing the same with AI? Why have we, suddenly not, why don't we want to copy paste those kinds of things? But there's also a lot of feedback on YouTube that I wanted to share with you. So people talking about cons in the tech labor market. Paul Maina says it's huge, and Kenyans rank amongst the top African nations to embrace the digital jobs. But because of minimal or no regulation, some fall into the traps of con jobs. That's another thing. How many people are getting conned, getting scammed, getting trafficked because of the promise of jobs? Mouthpiece says, I bought a transcription account, but once my VPN was weak and was seen to be in Kenya, account ikafungwa. Now direct clients run off without paying. T for tough. Exactly. Those are people's everyday lives, and that's the economic, activity. Smallest ever. Why is remote tasks no longer working in Kenya? What's the reason behind this? It's a lot of questions, but let me start with some internet red flags because of the con jobs bit. As we're going through, and we'll get into the legal aspect of it, what can and can you not do online. But let me start with the con jobs. How do I tell that this is a scam? What level of scamming is going on in Kenya right now? If you had numbers, if you have an overview. Yeah.
I laugh because there's this that assumes that there's some genuine jobs on these platforms and then some fake jobs. So I want you to realize who Remotask is. Remotask is owned by Scale AI. That's one of the biggest players in the AI market, and it's scammed people. It literally shut people's accounts down and went with their money. So I don't know, when you say which one, how do you tell the con ones?
No. In terms of an online job, because people do generally just want to work online.
I know.
And be able to get,
But that's what I'm speaking to. It's impossible. It's impossible to know which one. Even the ones that are legitimized and come with like, you have to onboard this way, marketed by the government itself, because Remotask was marketed by the government.
It was.
They also do these things to people. So it's what I'm hearing from that conversation is a myth busting. Is a myth busting.
Yeah.
That
a bubble.
Yeah. Like the digital jobs, that's where the thing is, and that's what we should be doing. But this is what people are telling you about. Like I don't know how to tell the real ones from the fake ones. I don't know that there's a way to protect people without the government stepping in and regulating that space. There's just no way to do that. Let me give you another example that will shock you. Appen was another platform, and at first it started out with label this picture for me, and then it became take a picture of your face and then label it, and then it became take a picture of your sitting room and label it. Oh, that's shocking. Take a picture of your child and label it. and your child playing and your child.
God.
It might not seem like that's a con job, but that's a con job because that's not how data collection is done. We have a data protection regime. It has very specific regulation around biometric collection of data. My photo, my whatever I look like, my child's photo, that's biometric data. We have a Children's Act that really regulates even how research involving children should be carried out. But these are legitimized jobs. So what I'm trying to say is that as it is, it just seems that we're leaving young people to figure it out for themselves, where it's a trial and error. I sign up for this job, maybe I get lucky. I'm promised $100, maybe I get $1 and I go home and I say thank you. We've talked to people who say that it's now put them in a loop where you have to work for like 25 hours, which means you're doing like the whole time you're just on your computer, chasing that money that you promised, but it's gamified. So I don't know what to say to that person and tell them this is how to tell the genuine jobs. Because even the genuine framed jobs
still also exploitative.
So it's become like lucky.
Yeah.
Some people will do online jobs, they'll get lucky and they'll, they get money. Some people won't get lucky, right? So when Remotas was asked about like why it shut down accounts from Kenya, it said it's because Kenyans are fraudulent. But then return people's money then.
Yeah.
That's the thing.
If that's where you're coming from.
Like,
and you say the government has to be invested in making the regulations,
exactly.
but from what I'm hearing, first of all, there even needs to be an information deficit when it comes to them understanding.
Yes.
You've probably tried to make those connections. Is there still a lot of hesitation? Is there any interest in even understanding the broad spectrum of how these things work? Because I feel like it starts there. You have to be invested, interested, and then open.
Yes.
My guess is that there's a hesitation, or it just seems too big and complex, but yet they're the only ones who can step in.
Bargaining power. Bargaining power is the answer. So I want to first say that what I really like the most about tech workers is how organized they are. They have realized that they're in the pits of the pits, and the only way out is to come together and advocate for better policies. Look at the ride-hailing industry and how well organized they are. They literally pushed for regulation by themselves until, do you know we're the first country that actually has regulations against Uber and the other ride-hailing companies? A driver led exactly.
Yes. It was around the same time as Mandamano.
Exactly. Look at the Data Labelers Association. Look at the content moderators coming together and say, no, we actually need regulation in this space. But the answer lies in bargaining power. The companies are also talking to the government. So the law before the Senate is a good example, right? Like literally, that was a government, a company-led effort to change the law. But the government is not listening to its biggest constituent, which is the workers. Like that is who you represent. That is the people you should care for. Long after this whole hullabaloo about AI passes, those are the people you will remain with. So right now we have organized groups of workers who are really struggling to speak up to their leaders, to the public, and say, this is what we are going through. This is what is happening in this. Please pay attention and see how you can help us. But you have the companies that are just going directly to State House, promising more jobs, of course, promising, investment in the country, and the government only listening to that piece. That goes against what even public participation is about. Both should be given a fair hearing platform, because my position has always been we can achieve both. We can attract, we can be the country that actually acts as a model. Like, yes, you get the work, but you also protect your people, so that you're not looking at a net negative in your country. So for me, that's where the problem is. It's that now the workers are left to, if you want justice, go to court. And as I said, like, I'm a litigant, and I do believe in our judicial system, but also the way it's set up, it's not quick justice.
No.
Right? That worker who lost money is going to think about, should I chase the remote task money, or should I
look for a new job?
Exactly. Do you see? So you've already, like, in by design, you've excluded them from justice, and that's what's painful about this. Think about a government promoting this platform and this platform doing that. What level of badism do you feel needs to exist for a company to feel comfortable enough to do that to a government that actually sponsors it and supports it? That's problematic. What you should be doing instead is building bridges with the people. My call to action, for example, would be for leaders to sit down and listen to the workers. They are well organized, they know the issues. Sit down with them and listen to what they're telling you.
Right. Yeah. I'm looking for the fix, and I'll begin with my earlier question, which was with our data protection laws, we went the EU way, which has come through for a lot of us consistently, and it continues to. With now changes in AI, with data tech labor widening, what's happening in terms of legislation right now? What's in Parliament that could be a positive, or what's there that honestly we need to trash and throw out?
The Business Laws Amendments Bill, that is a very dangerous precedent that we are setting. We are saying that tech companies are immune. We are saying, so what the law says, and let me be very factual about this. So in this country, there is the model called the business process outsourcing model. Right. Think about the clothes made in Asia and the warehouses that they are made in. That's sort of the same model that the government wants to, adapt. All right. So the BPO model in itself is not a new thing, is not a bad thing. Okay. It's a category of exporting labor. Okay, so for example, the BPOs that are most common in Kenya actually have EPZ status, like they are tax exempt. We're encouraging them to come and set up in the country. So that is the beginning of this model and how this works. These jobs are being done. The problem is what's happening in these BPOs is not what the government is saying.
Okay.
Those two things don't match. When companies give contracts for algorithm training or content moderation, I told you earlier, there's a huge intellectual property concern.
Yes.
And intellectual property is just the proprietary designs underlying these systems. For a content moderator, it's that the content moderator needs to access the back end of Facebook to actually delete a post that violates the community standards. So Facebook is going to be very careful about that intellectual property protection. They're not going to give access to just anybody, and they're going to make sure that they have direct control over what's happening. So then now we see that the BPO now starts to play an only merely facilitative role where they just bring people to work, but then after that the tech company takes over. They're the ones who are directing you on what to do. They're the ones who are reviewing your jobs. They're the ones who are saying whether you should be paid your bonus or not depending on your work. They're the ones who are actually having conversations with you about the policies. So then if something bad happens to me while at work, who should be held accountable?
Your employer.
Who is the employer?
In this case, who is your employer?
Exactly.
Look at that vicious cycle.
Exactly. So it's both of them involved. But then now what the government is telling you is, because you came in through the BPO, only sue the BPO. But the BPO is also saying, and I'll give the example of ChatGPT. When ChatGPT first came out, it was not the only version that had come out. There's a version that had come out that was immediately pulled off from the internet because people were using it to perpetrate sexual violence. You would give it the most horrendous sexual violent prompts and it would respond. So it was quickly taken down, and then they sent the algorithm to Kenya to be trained on the worst forms of sexual violence and to be cleaned up. So it was being done at Summersource, which is one of the BPOs, right? And Summersource's CEO is now on record saying, do you know, we didn't even know what this job was.
Didn't have the context.
Because of the control that this platforms need to have.
Garden Fit on YouTube has actually said, what I'm getting here, it's like allowing kids to join the army at 16, take them to the front line, combat tours. At 24, they're wrecks from PTSD. That's content moderators for you. Charlotte Mooley says, keep up the good work you're doing, Mercy. We're proud of you. I mean, you've really... we need to do it. I'm almost tempted to be like Mike Quaground for tech labors, especially because the way you've spoken to the fact that they're trying to have their voices heard, it's heartbreaking. And, I guess hopefully this is one way in which we're able to amplify what it is they're dealing with. I don't want us to forget the Ogopa WhatsApp
Yes, we can
element.
go back to that.
But you wanted to, okay. Mariam is still threading.
Wait. Do you realize also that they also moderate content for WhatsApp? So it's the same conversation.
Okay.
It's fragmented, but it's all like what I said earlier. It's one conversation.
It's all connected.
But to complete your answer, the Business Laws Amendment Bill now says you can't sue the tech company. You can only sue the BPO. Think about the Uber drivers. The Uber drivers, they'll sign contracts with Uber, BV, like the one in Netherlands, and even Bolt, like the one in Estonia. But there's a Bolt here, which then will tell you, but you don't sign contracts with us. So when you tell that person you can't sue Uber, what are you telling them? So we're really betraying our people through that law. And for me, it's one thing that we need to pay attention to. And also, I hope that the legislators, when they retreat to actually look at what that law says, educate themselves on what the workers are going through and actually call the workers and listen to them because they are the ones who understand where the country is as far as AI is concerned.
Yes.
Yeah. You can sue the middleman, but not. And the middleman, even middleman is a strong word.
The middleman will tell you, I actually don't know what happens here.
Yeah.
So can you really sue the middleman?
Can you? That's... You've opened a really big can of worms, and Jano, you're right. We do need to have a micro ground with tech labor and to figure out their actual pain points and how we fix and how we move from there. But let me go now to the Ogopa.
Yes, let's go
WhatsApp.
back to WhatsApp.
Specifically, but just in general, we've seen now cases of people going to court and using WhatsApp receipts basically and saying, you said you were going to send the child support on date Y.
Yeah.
You threatened violence on date Y.
Yes.
This is why. Walk us through using digital evidence in a court of law for matters both criminal and civil.
Okay. So I have to say, what's happening is that we are all in a state of panic because of what is the Swahili word? The effects of the internet. I feel like in Swahili it would come out.
Effects of mtandao. Effects.
Taifa leo it, Mariam. Taifa leo it for us, Mariam.
Okay, yes. I'm trying to think.
Taifa leo it for us.
The legal profession is in a panic. Yes. The bench, the bar is in a panic. Yes. Like we're trying to find our way as we go. But this is what I like to say. We don't have to be in a panic because, again, the laws already set the framework. So the digital evidence piece, I like to... I really think about how people just quickly take screenshots and share.
Yeah.
And then I remember this Article 31C, to be specific. Go read it. Go make it your friend. That you have a right to have the privacy of your communication protected. Which means when I tell you something, I have a reasonable expectation that that conversation will remain between us. Okay. Not with the 10 billion followers that you have on social media, not with anybody. Pivot to the criminal justice system. Article 50 of the Constitution gives the rights of an accused person. And one key right is that if you have evidence against you that has been obtained illegally, then it should be excluded.
Okay.
So you're taking me to court and okay, you produce your WhatsApp screenshots. I have a right to say, kick that out and then judge me without that piece of evidence.
Right.
Because there's a very clear way of obtaining digital evidence. Okay? Go to the civil system as well, and now we go to the Evidence Act. Okay. So the Evidence Act tells you how to collect and produce digital evidence. The same rule under Article 31 and Article 50 of the Constitution. Notice I'm using the Constitution. Yes. I'm not using acts as my basis. I'm grounded in the Constitution. Those laws don't change. That doesn't move. It don't move.
Like my hair.
It don't move. It don't move. Right? Mine moves, right?
That meme was hilarious. My hair, it don't move.
Actually, mine moves.
But bouncing, you know? But go on.
So even in civil litigation processes, and I've seen this, there have been some good judgments, and it's good for us to also highlight the good judgments. There have been good judgments. There was one in a divorce case, for example, where an ex-husband had the wife trailed so that he could catch her having an affair, and then went to court and said, she was having an affair, and I tracked her, and this is it. And the judge said, but you collected this evidence illegally. So all of it was tossed away. Wow. So it's like, now make an argument without the cheating aspect because you obtained that evidence illegally. Do you get that? So there have been good precedents set, and the rule still applies. When you obtain evidence of communication illegally, that evidence should be excluded. What we are not seeing from the bench, and I'm speaking as a litigator and also calling on the Law Society of Kenya to pay attention to this issue, we are not seeing magistrates and judges being very proactive about this point. They get screenshots, even medical records. Like someone would file a children's case against you and say this person has PTSD or has depression and cannot take care of their child, and then take a screenshot because you know you're in a household, so you have access to, and then take a screenshot of your medical records and produce them in court. So you see, as a citizen, yes, ignorance of the law is not a defense, but as a member of the bench, as a magistrate and a judge, I have a responsibility to also care for people and make sure that the evidence presented before me is not illegal. My wish would be that every time that comes before a judge, the judge asks, how did you obtain this? And if it was obtained illegally, toss it out even before, because not everybody has the knowledge. You said there is a process. I just want to get the correct process for obtaining digital evidence, because then I do want to go before a court of law and say, oh, Jano threatened me. She would never, she's a sweetheart. But I have the screenshot. I don't want to screenshot it and you tell me it's inadmissible. So what's the process? Criminal, civil, very different processes, okay? So the way criminal litigation works is that the case is not driven by you, it's driven by the police. So you brought in the piece about technology-enabled sexual violence. for those who don't know what we're talking about, it's deep fakes. And right now, there's a very big ring that is going on Telegram and on X, where girls posing very nicely and posting nice pictures on Instagram, you get your picture taken from Instagram, turned into a deep fake pornography film, and sold on Telegram. Okay, so that's basically what we're talking about. So like in that incident or in that case, or someone who's been threatened, that is the example you used, my job as a citizen is to go and report it to the police. Okay, report it to the police, then the police have investigation procedures where they will obtain not just, now you're talking about a screenshot. They can use the legal process, which includes, very important, going to court to obtain a warrant. And not just a normal kind of warrant, it's a warrant to access electronic records. And they can get the whole conversation with context, because that is what the magistrate needs, that is what the judge needs. They need the context of the conversation and produce that as evidence. That is a criminal piece. So if I wanted to go after this person, so the right to privacy is mine. So if you want to screenshot something that is between us, or even record a conversation, I see people sneaking in with conversations. You're going to have a difficult conversation with your ex or with your employer, and you sneak in with like, oh boy. That every person,
on your
every single person in that conversation has a right to privacy, and they are communicating with an expectation that their privacy will be respected. So I would need every single one of yours permission to share that conversation with third parties, or a court order for me to produce it. And if you went to court and said, this conversation happened, that person has a right to privacy, but I need that information to prove that my right to this and this was also violated. The courts then will judge and see, is that legitimate request there, and obtain it for you. But also most of these things, especially where you need screenshots, are criminal offenses, where you would need the criminal piece of it. And once you get the evidence from the police, you can even use it in civil court. So there are processes to this where we don't have to over-rely on screenshots. The defamation piece, let's come to that.
Yes.
So
the threshold for defamation.
The threshold for defamation. Defamation is a very old concept. It's an old thought, so to speak. Now we are all legal, students.
Yes.
Taught one. Shout out to my
Wakili, a quick one.
Yeah, Wakili, a quick one.
Call me Wakili.
Yeah, exactly. Go say, this is a thought. Anyway, so the thought of defamation is a very old concept, like grounded in, common law and blah, blah, blah. But its definition remains stagnant. You publish false information, which you knew to be false, or had reason to believe
was false,
okay, or did not have reason to believe was true. Both ways. And that publication is made to a third party. Very, very important. Is made to a third party. Like if I come to you and I say, you're this horrible person, look at the shirt you're wearing, that is not defamation. But if I went to Janet and said the same thing, if it was false and met all the other criteria, that's not the whole criteria. The third criteria is that it has to change your standing in the minds of right-thinking members of society.
That one is usually the...
That's where the line is.
Yes. But with time, we've seen a new form of defamation come up where the publication was so clearly so wrong and so malicious that you don't even have to prove that people's minds were changed. Just de facto, this was a defamatory, publication, right? So when you think about that tire, you can now apply it across whatever media, whether it's physical, WhatsApp. That's why I was saying we don't need to be panicking about regulating social media. These rules exist. Yeah. Okay. So even if it happens on WhatsApp where I'm telling other people something, the thing is, if it changes their perspective towards me, then that is defamatory. Or if now it's the way defamation happens in a digital world is that it doesn't stay in closed circles.
No, it's out there.
By the time I'm thinking that this thing is harmful to me, it's not because it was shared on a family WhatsApp group. It's because it is on the front page of Taifa Leo. That is the point where I'm going. So you see, I don't even need the WhatsApp messages where this information was shared. I just need to produce the Taifa Leo.
We are coming up to 2 minutes before we end.
Okay.
How can people find you? How can people interact with access to legal rights when it comes to the tech world? Tech laborers others who have family, friends who are there, what's a good starting point? What's a good access point for them if they have questions or concerns?
All right. Thank you so much for that. I'm on X mostly and on LinkedIn as Masi Mutemi. I also have a website, masimutemi.com. If you want legal representation, please, you're welcome at our firm. We have a law firm, Zilli and Sumbi Advocates. It's in Nairobi, it's in Kidhimani, in Machakos County, and in Mwingi, in Kitui County. You can walk to our offices or look at our website. And, you know, if you have any questions around your tech rights, we are happy to support you. Yes.
We could have
the algorithm is a person. That's her
the
vibe.
Oh yeah, the algorithm
It is a person because behind it, remember,
is a person.
There you go.
And they're doing a lot of work. Thank you so much, Masi.
Thank you.
You've done an amazing job of giving us an outlook on digital rights, on tech labor. I think we'll have you back because we've scratched the surface. There's so much more that we need to go into. Thank you also for representing our moderators because, again, incredibly hard work. They should either get psychosocial support, be paid properly. They shouldn't have to go through some of the things that they go through. Labor rights are across the board, not just ground, as we like to say.
There you go.
Oh my goodness. We have CrossFit Training 101 coming up on your world with Mwikali and Winnie from couch to CrossFit. From couch to CrossFit. I know some people are feeling attacked.
From couch
They're like,
to
I feel like I like this couch.
From potato.
That's his extreme CrossFit.
From couch potato to CrossFit. I don't know.
To CrossFitter.
Yeah. Yes.
Right. So they're going to be having that conversation in just a few moments. But yeah, to Mariam's point, thank you, Mercy. That for me was an education. I know 60 Minutes just scratched it for me. Now you really, and it's upon all of us, I think, to listen into the rights of tech laborers. So also happy Labor Day, right back to you.
Yes.
And everyone.
Yes.
Tutakuwa tu hapa kesho.
Yes.
Hug a tech worker tomorrow, please. They're going through
tomorrow.
it. Don't hug your Uber driver, please. That is sexual harassment.
Yeah.
Hug.
There's parameters.
A tech worker you know and are familiar with and has consented.
Yes.
Consent.
Ndio muhimu. Janet Bugwa, Mariam Bishar, Eric Latif, thank you for fixing the nation with us. We're here, we're the fixers. With Mercy, you guys are also a community of fixers. You can find all these conversations on social media, on our YouTube. There's a channel, it's a playlist with all of the conversations. For now, though, it's over to your world. Thank you so much and have a good day.